Hey YouTube, welcome back to the channel, and on today's episode we're going to repair this dent in this door. It's a nasty little dent. I'm going to walk you through the steps I take to repair this dent, and we're going to repair this from start to finish, and we're going to do it right now. So if you want to increase your knowledge and build your skills, start now and subscribe to the channel and click that bell so you don't miss anything. Okay, so the way I plan on attacking this dent is, first of all, I need to get this body line right here. There's a body line that goes from the quarter panel down the door and around. We need to get that back into shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind this down to bare metal, and we're going to use a stud welder and pull that line back into shape. Okay, so what I'm going to attempt to do here is, it's coming out nicely, so I want to pull on this stud here, and there's a high spot right on this ridge here. From when it got pushed in, it pushed out the metal here. So we need to knock this down while we pull this out. So I'm going to open up this door and tap and try and pull on this and tap that high spot down. Okay, so now I'm going to use the G90E to do some dent pulling and finish some of the low areas. I don't want to over pull it too much, so I'm going to use this. I probably will go back to the stud welder if there's any difficult areas that need some more attention. So now we're going to go ahead and apply some body filler to this. a skim coat to see where we're at and block it and see where the highs and lows are. I think it feels pretty good, but there might be a high area right here. So we're gonna check that out. For the most part, it pulled out pretty nice. We have a couple little other dents right here in this area that we need to remove, but we'll do that after we fill this. Okay, so I went ahead and filled this off camera. I used some 3M premium body filler, just mix it up according to specs. And now I'm gonna sand over this with some 80 grit DA paper. And basically I'm just gonna knock it down and get it smooth so I can lay another coat of body filler on it, because I know this is not gonna be a finished coat right here. I'm getting all the rough areas knocked down, and I'm gonna block it a little bit and then add another coat. So as you can see here, there are a couple low areas, quite a few low areas in this still, and that is to be expected. So basically I just want to get this shaped and get the body line shaped a little bit for another coat. Okay, so I'm going to spray guide coat on here. Okay, so I went ahead and blocked out that guide coat, and you can see, if you look real close here, I'll point to them, you can see where the guide coat is still left in those low areas. So we're going to add another coat of body filler. This is the 3M Premium, and get those filled and block this out one more time. So I want to try and lay this body filler in there as smooth as I possibly can. It helps with the sanding, so there's less sanding to do, and it's easier to block. So if you can do that, that's what you want to do. So once again, I'm going to go over it with the 80 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander and get it smoothed out and shaped. So we're going to add another guide coat here, so while I'm blocking it, I can see if there's any high or low areas. I'm using 80 grit still on a block, a soft block, one that curves with the panel. And I'm just going to block this out and see if there's any low areas that I need to fill. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and shape this body line. I've taken a piece of masking tape and I start on the quarter panel where the body line is, and I follow it down where it needs to go all the way down, and then I'm going to mark it with this pen. And then I'm going to pull the tape and I will be able to see where that body line should be, and I'm going to block down to that body line. So you can see here I'm blocking down to that pen mark. Okay, and that'll give me a good idea of where that body line needs to be, and I can shape it from there. I will block the flat area upwards towards the pen area, the pen mark, and that will give me a good body line. So now I'm going to switch over to 180 grit sandpaper on this soft block, and we're going to block it like a finish block over the body filler. Now we are going to put another coat of icing over top of this, and this is going to fill any deep scratches that get missed or any 180 grit scratches that are left. So we're removing the 80 grit scratches, we're shaping it, and now we're going to lay some icing over this to fill any remaining scratches. It's a lot easier to sand and we need to be down to 320 grit scratches before we prime. So now I'm going to use 180 to sand out the icing. Icing is just the name of the product that I'm using. It's a poly putty. And now we're going to address this crease. There's a crease right along this door. We're going to grind it, and then I'm going to use the G90E dent puller to pull out the dent. It's not very deep, so the G90E will work well to pull out this dent. Okay, so now I just need to add a thin coat of body filler over this crease, and then we'll block this out. So I added a little bit more icing to the main dent, and I'm blocking that out. I've blocked out the body filler on the crease with some 80 grit, and now I'm going to mask everything off. I don't want to get any body filler or any icing in the jamb, and I need to get real close to the edge of that door. So this is the icing. It's just a two-part poly putty, and it works really well. It sands really easy. So I'm going to put that over it. We're going to block it out. That's going to remove any of those 80 or 180 grit scratches so we can get prepared for primer. So if at all possible, you want to use an X pattern when you're blocking body filler. This is the best way to get it straight. In a flat area, you can do that. You know, it's kind of hard on this curved door, but on a flat area, you definitely can block it in an X pattern. Okay, so now I'm going to put the first coat of primer on. I went ahead and taped this up, and I prepped out the area around it with 320, and I've sanded over this entire thing with 320 before I primed, and you want to make sure you do that. So here's a look at the dent and the primer after we put the first coat of primer on. I'm going to go ahead and put a second coat of primer on here because I want to make sure I have plenty of material to block this. You don't want to run out of material, and I don't really want to have to prime it again. So I want to put another coat on, make sure it's nice and thick so I can block it out. So when I say block it out, I mean I'm trying to remove any kind of waves that are in this bodywork still or the body filler. It's very straight, but sometimes you get waves and you need to block it out with primer to get it straight. So I'm using 320 grit sandpaper on my block here to block this straight. I went through a little bit on the body filler. You can see there's a little spot of body filler, but I'm going to touch that up. I reprimed it. I put a thin coat of primer over the entire thing. So when I go over it with 600 grit sandpaper, it's going to remove a lot of those 320 scratches, and it's just an extra precaution so no scratches show through your paint. So I like to 600 grit everything before I paint. And so what I'm doing here is I'm taping up all the trim. I don't want to hit any of this trim with my orbital sander, and we're sanding these blend areas, this door I'm blending into and the quarter panel that I'm blending into with 600 grit sandpaper on this orbital sander. So I'm wiping down all the areas that I'm painting with some wax and grease remover to remove any contaminants that might be left on this panel. Okay, so now let's get this all taped off and ready to spray. Okay, I'm just going to tack it off with a tack cloth before we spray it. And this just removes any dust or dirt or lint that might be on the panel. Okay, now I'm putting the first coat of color on, and basically you want to cover the primer first. I always like to get the primer covered well first, so I'll put one coat on, I'll let it flash off for about 10 minutes, and then I'll put another coat on it right here and get it covered first before I start the blending process. So this just came in the mail. This is called a Gunbudd, and it's to go on your paint gun so you can see better, so you don't miss anything when you're painting. And I think it's going to be really helpful. So I'm going to go ahead and put it onto the gun. See there, it lights up. It has a few different settings. It has a motion sensor, so it senses when you pick up the gun, and it goes on and off. So that's kind of cool. So I think this is going to be real helpful. So I'm going to add it to the gun and we'll see how it works. So I'm going to tack it off, remove any dust or dirt before I spray the next coat on. And as you can see, I'm using the Gunbudd, and I really ended up liking it. I'm not sponsored by Gunbudd or anything. I purchased this, but it was very reasonable. It was like, I think it was $56 or $59, and it seemed to work really well. I mean, I could see a lot better, because in my shop I don't have a paint booth, so as you can see, it's sometimes it can be dark, but this really illuminated really well. It has 3 different settings, and 2 of the settings narrow that light down, and there's one setting that's a broader light that works the best in my opinion. So I don't know if you guys are interested. I will leave a link in the description, but it's pretty handy. There's some other companies that make these kind of lights that are much more expensive. So this is a good budget-friendly light. So now I'm adding my first coat of clear, but my last coat of color, I wanted to let you know I reduced the paint like 15% and then blended it out so it would have a good color match and a seamless transition into the old color. So when you're putting your first coat of clear on, you want to cover the painted areas first. Get a good coat on those painted areas, let it set up, and then do a full coat on the entire area you're clearing. And then I would put a medium to wet coat on first. You're not trying to do a flow coat first. You're trying to just get it covered well. You don't want it to be dry, but you want it to be a medium to wet coat, and then do your flow coat on your last coat, your second or your third coat. And when you're spraying your clear, you want to overlap 60%. You want to have a consistent speed. You want to have your volume and your gun set up properly. It's different for every person, but I like a wide open fan pattern. I like my pressure between about 25 psi at the regulator. And then your fluid, I go about 3 turns out on the fluid and adjust it accordingly. If I need more material coming out of the gun. So now I'm putting on the flow coat. I'm hitting it a little bit harder, more material, slowing down just a little bit. So I'm using a new clear that I've used several times, but it's new to me, and it's a really nice clear. It flows out really well. So this is flowing out really well. It's called, it's V Series. I think it's made by Valspar. I can get you more details on that. Maybe in another video I'll do a review on it. But it buffs out nice, and it flows out really nice, and it's supposed to be real durable. It's a high solids clear. I don't have a link for it, so I can't put a link in the description, but it's a V Series clear. This had a little bit of dust in this paint job. It flowed out really well, but it had some dust in it, so I did do a cut and buff on this car before I delivered it, and it came out really nice. I think I'll show you here in the end what the finished product looked like. So here's the before picture of the dent, and you can see here it came out really nice. This is the finished product. Okay, so here's the finished product. Let's take a look at it. There's where the dent was, and as you can see, it's gone. It came out very nice. So remember, if you want to increase your knowledge and build your skill, start now by subscribing to the channel and clicking that bell so you don't miss anything. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.